populated. Uh, like parts of it had like 20,000 people uh, per square mile, which like does not exist in Louisville anymore. Uh, and then the expressway comes in and cuts the neighborhood clean in half, and you get like even like people are displaced directly from the expressway, or maybe their mom got displaced and moved somewhere else, so they move out to be with their family. Uh, you have this happen on a great scale to where like Smoketown had tens of thousands of residents uh, in the early 20th century, and now it has like 2,500, like at most. Uh, so, and then you have the displacement, and then you have all the externalities that come with living right next to an expressway. Uh, Within 1,000 feet, optimistically, probably further, you get exposure to tailpipe emissions, uh, brake dust, tire dust. That's where most microplastic exposure comes from. Uh, you get increased exposure to sound, uh, and there's been studies that show that like just hearing an expressway in the background like constantly activates your fight or flight response, even if you don't realize it, which is really bad for your cardiovascular health because you're like basically stressed all the time. Uh, and with the way we set up our expressways in Louisville and in pretty much every city in the country, they were sent through almost exclusively black neighborhoods uh, or communities of color of some kind. Uh, so, like in Louisville, it's Smoketown, clearly, but then it goes up to the river across downtown and into uh, neighborhoods that have high populations of color in the western side of Louisville, and it goes into the east. But if you look at uh, where it goes in the east, like back in the '60s, like a map of that area, it was pretty barren. Whereas all the expressways that went through the neighborhoods of color went jammed through the middle of them. There's actually, if you look at the newspaper at the time, the Courier Journal, uh, there's like a bunch of articles about all the people in the East End throwing a hissy fit about the expressway and like how it can affect them. And there's like almost nothing about how it might affect communities like Smoketown or Russell or Portland. But
Did
I can ramble for a while, so I'll stop there.
did Smoketown, like when I think of Smoketown's boundaries now, it did it used to extend beyond where 65 is?
Uh, your mic's cutting out right now. I can't understand you. I don't know if this is on. Smoketown. Uh, I mean, it roughly had the same border. I mean, it was a bit bigger, but uh, I guess more so it's split. You were looking at a map.
Yeah, when I was looking at one of the maps of the one of the blogs you had written.
Oh my gosh, the it keeps cutting out.
This is terrific.
It just hates us.
It does hate us.
Uh, hmm. uh, you can hear me fine though.
Yeah, I can hear you fine. That's weird.
Uh,
You want to just move on to the next question? You have you have written copies of it, so if it doesn't sound great, you at least know what I'm asking.
I, I'm mostly just hearing like eh, uh, eh right now. Hello.
All right. So at least we can hear each other now, right?
Yes.
All right. Well,
Okay.
all technology aside, let's you want to move on to the second question.
Sure.
All right. So Louisville has used slum clearance to make room for transit projects, and presumably that would mean raising buildings that pose a risk to public health. Do you think the planners had other considerations when they were choosing which buildings and communities to target?
Uh, so, yes. If you, the thing about urban renewal and slum clearance is at face value, it had like a kind of understandable goal where you had all these dilapidated structures and uh, government officials come in and say, like, oh, these buildings don't have running water, they're about to fall over. So, we can tear them down and build nice, fancy, modern housing instead of that. Which wouldn't be that big a deal if that was what they actually did. I mean, they did it occasionally, but a lot of the time it was just an excuse to displace black residents or create some kind of physical barrier between white residents of an area and neighborhoods of color. Uh, so, like in the case of Louisville, a lot of our slum clearance started with the first plan for Louisville, which was written by Harland Bartholomew, who is a notorious racist and kind of infamous in planning circles now. Uh, and I can't remember the exact quote, but there's basically a quote where he says something to the effect of, it should be like a significant goal to uh, separate the white population from the African American population. He uses very different words,
Right.
but that was something he said. Uh, and I mean, if you look at Louisville, uh, one of the most atrocious examples of these other considerations is the Chestnut Walnut Street corridor, uh, which is Muhammad Ali, specifically between 5th and 13th Street, which was a very significant center of business for African Americans in Louisville. It had the city's largest black theater. It had tons of businesses. It was very densely populated. Uh, but then in the 60s, Louisville decided that we needed a civic center. Well, it was a mix of a civic center and a convention center district. Uh, so they came in and tore down, tons of historic structures, and basically, in creating this district, they just created a bunch of parking lots for the most part. And that conveniently created a very prominent physical barrier between the mostly white downtown workers east of 5th Street and the black population that lived in 9th Street and west of 9th Street. So there's definitely heavy racial considerations when it comes to these urban renewal projects. I will say I'm talking about them more generally, but when it comes to transit, I mean, the same principle applies. Well, transportation, I should say. Louisville, since we never had like a mass transit system post 1948 that had like fixed infrastructure like rail, we just had buses. We never did any big urban renewal projects to build mass transit that were also used to destroy neighborhoods of color. It was usually expressways, which is like personal transit at the cost of public expense. But I mean, if you look at where all the expressways are, I mean, the planners at the time would tell you that they are where they are because that's where land was cheapest. So they could buy out the land and then build the expressway through it. But it was cheapest because of things like redlining, decades of intentional disinvestment, decades of intentional neglect by white leadership in the city. I'll stop myself there, but
Yeah, very common story that we see in a lot of cities. So,
oh yeah, I mean it's the American way.
right. The last thing when I was reading some of the articles that you'd written, I I noticed one that was about urban heat, and transportation obviously isn't the only factor that influences that, but it does play a significant role.
Right.
Which Louisville neighborhoods face the biggest heat risk right now, and what do you think the city could do to combat that?
Uh, well, first, I would say transportation probably does play the biggest role uh, because even though roads themselves may not take up a ton of space all the time, uh, the space we dedicate to storing cars when we're not using them does. So downtown and a lot of the urban core is covered in parking lots because of how car centric we are, and a lot of that came through urban renewal. So I would say transportation is the biggest thing that contributes to the urban heat islands, like directly and indirectly. But in terms of neighborhoods with the biggest heat risk, uh, you're mostly looking at neighborhoods that were the most strongly affected by urban renewal. So these are inner city neighborhoods on the periphery. I don't like this term, but it's what they call the area SoBro. You know that area, like between Old Louisville and downtown.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Uh, it's kind of made up. It's mostly just Limerick, but they started calling it SoBro,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it caught on. Uh, that area is super dense on vacant parking lots, and ironically, I can't remember which article it was, but one of my articles that I found out the place with the hottest surface temperatures in the city was the medical district next to downtown,
Right.
which now has effectively zero population because Dosker Manor closed. But still, that's an area where there's a high concentration of vulnerable people. And it has very low tree shade. It has very high numbers of impervious surfaces. So it creates that urban heat island effect. So it's mostly Smoketown's another one. It's actually slightly surprising in that it is stronger on the eastern edge of downtown, like downtown neighborhoods, than it is on the western side. So areas like Russell and Portland aren't great, but they're still better than neighborhoods like Smoketown and Phoenix Hill and the medical district and Sobro and stuff like that. Those are generally the worst ones.
When I was looking at the map that I guess the heat map that
Mm,
you had put on your post, I was looking at the West End and I thought, oh well, that spot looks really good, and I realized, oh wait, that's just the park.
yeah,
That's
like Shawnee looks like it's like the coolest neighborhood in the city, but it's mostly just because the park is there.
yeah,
Uh, and if that park wasn't there, it's not like we would ever invest the money to build something like that now.
yeah. Well, Sean,
That
thank you